You think you choose freely, but invisible laws script your behavior. Morality keeps you obedient, while smarter men harvest power from your predictability. You were not born seeing the world clearly. You were handed a lens, polished, moral, comforting, and told it was truth. That lens taught you what to admire, what to fear, what to call good. It also taught you how to be managed. Morality was your first leash, not because morality is useless, but because the version you received was designed for obedience. Be honest, be loyal, be fair, be predictable. These virtues sound noble, but in practice they function like open access points. They make your behavior legible, and what can be predicted can be controlled. Power does not operate through sermons. It operates through frameworks. Whoever defines the lens decides what actions feel wrong, what ambitions feel selfish, what resistance feels evil. You were trained to self-police long before anyone needed to threaten you. That is efficient control. Look closely at how you judge yourself. Guilt appears automatically. Hesitation follows ambition. You feel the need to explain, justify, soften. That reflex did not come from wisdom. It came from conditioning, a system that survives by harvesting. Your effort cannot afford you to think like a sovereign, so it teaches you to think like a servant who believes he is free. This is the first inversion you must swallow. The world is not organized around fairness. It is organized around leverage. Outcomes are not distributed by virtue, but by positioning. The lens you were given hides this by moralizing results. Winners are lucky or corrupt, losers are good people. This keeps the hierarchy stable. It prevents analysis. You were taught to ask, is this right? Instead of, does this work? That single substitution cost you years. Strategy was framed as manipulation, calculation as coldness, silence as weakness. Meanwhile, those who understood the real game smiled, agreed, and advanced. This chapter is not here to motivate you. It is here to strip you, because as long as you interpret the world through intention instead of incentive, you will remain exposed. People do not act based on what they say they value. They act based on what rewards them. Once you see that, moral language loses its hypnotic power. Notice how institutions speak. They promise safety, inclusion, purpose. Then they measure compliance, output, loyalty. The language is soft. The structure is predatory. This is not evil, it is natural. Systems behave like organisms. They feed where resistance is lowest. Men trained to be agreeable are fertile ground. You were also taught a lie about power itself, that it is loud, aggressive, obvious. That belief keeps you blind to quiet operators. Real power rarely announces, it frames. It sets rules others internalize. When you accept the lens you're given, you enforce the system for free. Understand this. The lens you wear determines what you notice, what you ignore, and what you tolerate. If your lens prioritizes approval, you will miss threats. If it prioritizes morality, you will misread incentives. If it prioritizes comfort, you will rationalize submission. This chapter achieves one thing only: destabilization. If you feel irritation, defensiveness, or a subtle urge to reject this framing, that is not intellect, it is conditioning fighting for survival. Good. That friction means the lens is cracking. From this point forward, you are not asked to abandon ethics. You are asked to stop confusing ethics with strategy. One governs who you choose to be. The other governs whether you survive the game being played around you. Most men never change lenses. They die believing the world betrayed them. The few who do experience something colder and more dangerous: clarity. Control rarely looks like control. If it did, you would resist it. Instead, it disguises itself as choice, preference, personality. You believe you act because you want to. In reality, you act because the machinery beneath you rewards some moves and punishes others. The first mechanism is incentive. Humans follow reward signals the way predators follow blood trails. Money, status, approval, access, these are currencies. The system does not need to command you when it can price your behavior. Do the right thing and you are praised. Deviate and you are isolated. Over time, your nervous system learns faster than your intellect. You stop exploring paths that feel expensive. Fear is the second mechanism. Not fear of death, fear of exclusion. Humans are herd animals with predator brains. Being cast out once meant starvation. That ancient wiring is still intact. Modern systems exploit it surgically. Shame replaces violence. Cancellation replaces execution. The threat is subtle but constant. Comply or lose your place. Notice how rarely force is used. Instead, narratives do the work. Good people behave like this, successful men think like that, these. Stories define the acceptable range of motion. You stay inside it without realizing you're pacing a cage. The third mechanism is status hunger. You were taught to downplay it, but status governs almost every interaction. Who speaks without interruption? Who waits? Who explains themselves? Who apologizes? Status is not about ego, it is about position. And position determines whose reality becomes shared reality. The system feeds status in controlled doses, promotions, titles, likes, invitations, just enough to keep you chasing, never enough to make you independent. This is how dependency is manufactured. When your identity is tied to external validation, withdrawal becomes a weapon. Then there is dependency itself, the most efficient leash. Financial, emotional, social. The more you need the system, the more it owns you. Debt is not just economic, it is psychological. Obligations narrow your options. Narrow options create predictable behavior. Predictability is control. Watch how early this begins. Education trains obedience to abstract authority. Workplaces reward visible effort over strategic restraint. Relationships punish detachment and reward emotional labor. Each layer reinforces the same lesson. Give more, question less. You were told this was cooperation. It is not. It is extraction disguised as virtue. Another mechanism is time pressure. Urgency collapses thinking. Deadlines, crises, artificial scarcity, these force quick compliance. You stop asking whether the rules make sense and focus on surviving the moment. This is why chaos is useful to those in power. Calm people analyze. Panicked people obey. Perhaps the most dangerous mechanism is internalization. Eventually, the system no longer needs to watch you. You watch yourself. You anticipate punishment before it arrives. You censor thoughts before they form. This is the final stage of control, self-regulation. At this point, domination becomes invisible. You defend the very structures that limit you because your identity is woven into them. Criticism feels like a personal attack. Alternatives feel reckless. Freedom feels irresponsible. This chapter matters because once you see the machinery, it loses its mystique. Not its power, but its illusion. You begin to separate intention from outcome, language from leverage, promises from incentives. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What behavior is being rewarded here?" That question alone will expose manipulation in employers, partners, institutions, and even friends. This is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. The men who remain controlled are not stupid. They are untrained in seeing systems. They take words at face value and mistake participation for agency. The men who gain leverage understand that every environment is engineered, and that engines can be studied. You are not yet free. You are simply awake enough to see the cage. Every system selects for certain types, not because it cares about morality, but because some men are easier to extract from than others. These men are not weak by nature. They are useful, and usefulness, when misaligned, becomes a liability. The first archetype is the loyalist. He believes consistency is character. He stays when he should leave. He defends structures that no longer benefit him because leaving would feel like betrayal. His loyalty is mistaken for reliability, then exploited as inertia. The system rewards him with praise, not power. Praise is cheap. Next is the moralist. He filters every decision through right and wrong as defined by the dominant narrative. He is predictable. You can move him by framing opposition as unethical. He becomes aggressive only in defense of rules he did not design. This makes him a perfect enforcer and a terrible strategist. Then there is the pleaser. He fears conflict more than loss. He overcommunicates, overgives, overexplains. He believes harmony equals safety. In reality, his transparency makes him legible, and legibility invites control. His boundaries are suggestions. Suggestions are ignored. The martyr is closely related. He endures unfairness silently, believing suffering earns moral credit. He waits for recognition that never arrives. Systems love martyrs. They absorb pressure without breaking and teach others that endurance is noble. This stabilizes exploitation. Another type is the striver, ambitious but unarmed. He works harder instead of positioning better. He believes output guarantees advancement. When it doesn't, he blames himself and doubles down. The system lets him exhaust himself because replacement is easy. Then there is the honest man. He confuses transparency with integrity. He reveals intentions early, shares leverage freely, assumes others play clean. He is shocked when information is used against him. His honesty becomes a data source for less sentimental actors. None of these men are evil. That is irrelevant. They are selected because their traits reduce friction. They require fewer controls. They internalize expectations. They shame dissenters. They normalize compliance. The most dangerous part: these archetypes are praised. Culture celebrates them because celebration reinforces supply. Movies, slogans, mentors all reinforce the same message: be good, be loyal, be open, be selfless. Notice how rarely power is mentioned. Notice how often sacrifice is. If you recognize yourself here, do not rush to defend your identity. Defense is how archetypes persist. Instead, observe where your behavior benefits others more reliably than it benefits you. That is the extraction point. This chapter is not asking you to become cruel. It is asking you to become selective. Traits are not virtues or flaws in isolation. They are tools. In the wrong environment, even strength becomes a liability. Predators do not hunt the strongest. They hunt the most accessible, predictable paths, repeated behaviors, emotional reflexes. Archetypes make you legible. Legibility invites targeting. Once you see these patterns, you will also see how often they are triggered intentionally. Loyalty tests, moral baiting, guilt framing, urgent requests. Each one is designed to activate a known type. The shift begins when you stop asking, "What kind of man am I?" and start asking, "What kind of man does this environment reward and why?" The answer is rarely flattering. Remain as you are, and you will continue to be useful. Change, and you will become inconvenient. Systems resist inconvenience. That resistance is your signal. If you still believe manipulation is rare, personal, or accidental, this chapter removes the illusion. Predation is not a deviation from human nature. It is human nature under pressure. Civilization did not erase it, it refined it. Look at history without sentiment. Empires did not rise on virtue. They rose on coordination, deception, and leverage. The most dangerous leaders were never the loudest tyrants, but the quiet architects, men who understood incentives better than ideals. They didn't force loyalty. They engineered dependence. Grain supplies, land rights, protection. When survival is outsourced, obedience follows. Modern systems use the same blueprint, just cleaner. Corporations speak in values while optimizing extraction. Governments speak in safety while expanding control. Social movements speak in justice while consolidating influence. The language changes. The mechanics don't. Zoom in closer to relationships. Watch how power operates between individuals. One person invests more emotionally. One reveals more. One needs more. That imbalance becomes leverage. The one who needs less sets the pace. The one who cares more negotiates against himself. This is not cruelty. It is physics. You've seen it in workplaces too. The man with fewer obligations can walk away. The man with debt, family pressure, or identity tied to the role cannot. Guess who gets overworked? Guess who is valued but never promoted? Predation thrives where exit costs are high. Even morality becomes a weapon here. We're a family, do the right thing, think of the team. These phrases are not lies, they're tools. They selectively disarm men who internalized goodness as obedience, those who didn't hear opportunity. Human nature follows a simple rule. People test boundaries where they sense weakness. Not moral weakness, structural weakness, ambiguity. Need emotional exposure. Once tested successfully, pressure increases. This escalation is universal. Children do it. Adults deny it. The reason you were blindsided is because you were taught to expect reciprocity. But reciprocity only exists among equals with aligned incentives. Remove either condition, and exploitation emerges naturally. No villain required. Notice also how examples are hidden. Schools don't teach power failures. Media personalizes outcomes instead of analyzing systems. When a man is crushed, he is called unlucky, unskilled, or flawed. The structure remains unquestioned. This preserves the supply of believers. And when someone does speak plainly about power, he is labeled cynical, toxic, dangerous. That labeling is defensive. Truth threatens stability. Stability feeds on silence. This chapter deepens the threat because it removes your final refuge. The belief that my situation is different. It isn't. Scale changes. Context changes. the pattern remains. Predation does not require malice. It requires asymmetry. Once you accept that, you stop being shocked and start being precise. You no longer ask why someone took advantage. You ask how you made it possible. That question is uncomfortable. Good comfort is how patterns persist. You are not surrounded by villains. You are surrounded by incentives, and incentives do not care about your intentions. This is the moment many men retreat. They call this worldview dark, pessimistic, extreme. Then they return to the same behaviors and wait for a different outcome. The ones who don't retreat do something quieter. They adjust their exposure. They reduce legibility. They reclaim optionality. That shift begins next. Once you see the game, continuing to play it the same way is not virtue, it is negligence. This chapter is about repositioning, not rebellion. Loud resistance attracts attention. Strategic adjustment starves extraction. The first shift is silence, not secrecy, discipline. You speak less about intentions, plans, emotions. Information is leverage. Every unnecessary disclosure lowers your negotiating position. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. It also creates ambiguity, and ambiguity disrupts control. The second shift is detachment. You stop over-investing before incentives are proven. Attention, effort, loyalty, these are currencies. You distribute them gradually, contingent on return. This is not coldness. It is calibration. Predators rely on front-loaded generosity. Remove it, and pressure decreases. Next is optionality. You reduce dependency wherever possible. Fewer fixed costs, fewer emotional obligations that cannot be renegotiated. More exits. Power flows to the party who can walk away without collapse. This is why systems discourage independence while praising sacrifice. You also reframe reputation. Instead of seeking to be liked, you become respected for limits. Clear boundaries, enforced once, outperform endless explanations. People adjust quickly when consequences are consistent. Moral arguments invite debate. Structural limits end it. Another critical shift, you stop reacting immediately. Time is leverage. Delayed response breaks urgency traps. It allows incentives to surface. Many manipulations collapse when not fed instantly. The system counts on speed. Slow it down, and cracks appear. You also begin to choose environments, not just behaviors. No amount of discipline compensates for a predatory structure. If extraction is baked in, you leave early quietly, without announcing principles. Exit is the most underused power move. This chapter also dismantles a lie. That strategy requires aggression. It doesn't. Most leverage is gained through subtraction, less visibility, less predictability, fewer commitments. You become harder to read, harder to rush, harder to guilt. Importantly, you stop signaling virtue. Virtue signaling advertises compliance. You let actions speak, selectively. You do not explain your calculus to those who benefit from your confusion. Expect resistance. When you change posture, others feel the loss of access. They will test, provoke, moralize. This is diagnostic. The intensity of the pushback reveals how much you were feeding them. You do not argue. You adjust. Strategy is not persuasion, it is positioning. This reorientation is not dramatic. No speeches, no confrontations, just a steady withdrawal of free resources. Over time, relationships recalibrate or dissolve. Both outcomes are acceptable. What you gain is not dominance, but sovereignty, the ability to choose your exposure. That alone changes how you are treated. This chapter is preparation, because the final step is not adding new behaviors. Power does not coexist with certain self-images. This is the final cost most men refuse to pay. Not effort, not risk. Loss of identity. The old identity was built to survive approval-based systems. It needed to be seen as good, fair, reliable, reasonable. It took pride in being needed. It confused endurance with strength. That identity worked until it didn't. Systems change. Leverage shifts. What once earned safety becomes a liability. You cannot optimize for power while protecting that version of yourself. It leaks, it hesitates, it explains, it seeks moral clearance before acting. Predatory environments punish hesitation, so the identity must die not theatrically, but surgically. You stop defining yourself by how others describe you. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer correct misinterpretations that cost you nothing. You let reputations drift if control is preserved. This feels like erosion at first. You will feel colder, less expressive, less yourself. That discomfort is withdrawal. Approval is addictive. When you stop feeding on it, the nervous system panics. That panic is not danger, it is habit breaking. The replacement identity is quieter. It measures instead of reacts. It values position over validation. It chooses invisibility when visibility carries cost. It understands that being underestimated is an asset. This identity also accepts isolation, not loneliness, separation. You will no longer fit comfortably among those who still require consensus to move. Your silence will be misread. Your restraint will be labeled arrogance or apathy. That labeling is irrelevant. The final inversion is this: authenticity is not self-expression. It is self-alignment. You are not here to be known. You are here to be effective. With the old identity gone, guilt loses its grip. Not because you become immoral, but because you stop outsourcing judgment. You act based on consequence, not applause. You accept trade-offs without self-betrayal. This chapter completes the internal shift, but one thing remains: separation. Not everyone can or should make this transition. Systems survive because most people revert. The final chapter draws that line. This is the point of divergence. Everything before this was information. This chapter is selection. Most men will retreat now, not because they disagree, but because agreement carries a cost. They are unwilling to pay. They will take fragments of what you've seen and dilute them back into comfort. Strategy softened into balance, power reframed as confidence, the lens quietly swapped back. That is how systems protect themselves. Understand this clearly. Not everyone is meant to operate with sovereignty. Hierarchies require density at the base. Order requires compliant mass. If everyone saw incentives clearly, coordination would collapse. So reversion is not failure, it is function. You are not here to convert anyone. Influence creates noise. Noise creates exposure. Exposure attracts correction. The line you cross now is internal. You stop expecting recognition for restraint. You stop waiting for permission to prioritize yourself. You stop mistaking consensus for truth. From this point on, your choices narrow but sharpen. You will notice something unsettling. The fewer signals you send, the more others project. Some will test you, some will resent you, some will attempt to pull you back with nostalgia, morality, or fear. This is not personal. It is structural recoil. Do not announce your transformation. Announcements invite containment. The most dangerous men in any system are the ones who move without explanation. This chapter's warning is simple. Clarity isolates. If you require belonging, this path will punish you. If you require certainty, this path will starve you. Power operates in ambiguity, not affirmation. Your advantage is not dominance over others. It is freedom from scripts. You are no longer emotionally rentable, no longer automatically predictable, no longer cheap. Most viewers will close this and return to familiar behaviors. Armed with vocabulary but unchanged posture, they will feel smarter, not stronger. That is the trap. If you continue, it will not feel inspiring. It will feel quiet, controlled, intentional. You will measure progress not by praise, but by how rarely you are cornered. This is not a brotherhood, not a movement, not a mindset. It is a separation. Those who understand don't signal. They simply operate differently and are treated accordingly.